The fluorescent lights of our Chicago office hummed overhead as I straightened my blazer and knocked on Marcus Chen's corner office door. Through the glass partition, I could see him hunched over his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. With the intensity of someone desperately trying to meet a deadline. It was 7:30 p.m. on a Tuesday in March, and most of our colleagues had already headed home to their families or evening plans. "Come in, Sarah," Marcus called without looking up from his screen. His voice carried that familiar edge of impatience that had become his trademark over the past 6 months since becoming regional sales director. I stepped into his office, clutching the quarterly reports I'd spent the entire weekend perfecting. The space still smelled faintly of the takeout containers scattered across his desk, a mixture of lo mein and coffee that had become the office's unofficial scent of deadline panic. "The Morrison account analysis is complete," I said, placing the bound document on the one clear corner of his desk. "I've included 3 different approach strategies, plus the cost projections you requested." Marcus finally glanced up, his dark eye scanning the report's cover page before dismissing it with a wave. "Great. Email me the summary. I need you to reschedule my meeting with Davidson Industries for Thursday, and call Janet about the conference room booking for next week's presentation." I felt the familiar knot forming in my stomach, the same one that appeared every time he reduced my strategic analysis to administrative tasks. "Marcus, did you want to review the Morrison strategies together? I think there's a real opportunity to Sarah." He leaned back in his leather chair, the kind the company reserved for director-level positions. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, I really do, but let's be realistic about your role here. You're my assistant. A very good one, don't get me wrong, but an assistant nonetheless. Strategic planning is my department." The words hit like ice water, but I kept my expression neutral. This wasn't the first time he'd made such comments, and I'd learned that emotional reactions only seemed to validate his perspective. Instead, I nodded professionally and gathered my things. "Of course, I'll get those scheduling changes sorted out right away." As I walked back to my desk position strategically outside his office where I could field his calls and manage his calendar, I couldn't help but think about the MBA I'd earned while working full-time, the business development course I'd completed last summer on my own dime, and the 3 client relationships I'd personally salvaged when Marcus's abrasive approach had nearly cost us major contracts. The next morning brought news that would change everything, though I didn't realize it at the time. I was reviewing Marcus's schedule when Jennifer Walsh, our VP of Operations, appeared at my desk. Jennifer was the kind of executive who commanded respect without demanding it, sharp, fair, and with an uncanny ability to see potential where others saw only surface-level performance. "Sarah, do you have a few minutes? I'd like to speak with you privately." We walked to her office, past the motivational posters and employee achievement boards that lined the hallway. Jennifer's office was a study in organized efficiency, clean lines, natural light streaming through large windows overlooking the Chicago River, and the faint scent of the lavender plant she kept on her windowsill. "I've been watching your work," she began, settling into her chair and fixing me with her direct gaze. "The Morrison analysis that landed on my desk yesterday was exceptional. The strategic insights, the market research, the financial projections, it's director-level work." I felt a flutter of pride mixed with confusion. "Thank you, but I'm not sure how you." Marcus forwarded it to me as his own work, Jennifer continued, her tone carefully neutral. "But I recognized your analytical style from the Henderson project last year. The same thoroughness, the same innovative approach to market segmentation." The room fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic 15 floors below. I stared at my hands, unsure how to respond. Calling out my boss for taking credit for my work felt like career suicide, but staying silent felt like accepting defeat. "I've been thinking about organizational restructuring," Jennifer continued. "We're creating a new position, business development manager. It would involve strategic planning, client relationship management, and leading a small team. The salary would be substantial. Are you interested? My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the opportunity I'd been working toward for 3 years, the chance to move beyond scheduling meetings and answering phones. But there was one obvious obstacle. What about Marcus? This would mean Marcus would remain regional sales director, but the territories would be redistributed. The business development manager would have significant autonomy. Jennifer's smile was knowing. Sometimes organizational growth requires brave decisions, Sarah. The question is, are you ready to make them? I thought about all the late nights I'd spent perfecting reports that Marcus presented as his own work. I thought about the clients who specifically asked for me when they had concerns, knowing I'd actually listen and find solutions. I thought about the strategic insights I developed that had consistently outperformed Marcus's gut instinct approach. Yes, I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. I'm ready. Excellent. There will be a formal interview process, of course, but I wanted to gauge your interest first. The announcement will come next week, and we'll be making the final decision by the end of the month. Walking back to my desk, I felt like I was floating. The familiar office sounds, ringing phones, clicking keyboards, muffled conversations, seemed sharper, more vivid. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe deeply. Marcus was on a conference call when I returned, his voice echoing from behind his closed door as he discussed quarterly projections with what sounded like the West Coast team. I settled into my chair and opened my laptop, but instead of diving into his schedule, I found myself researching business development strategies and team management techniques. The official announcement came the following Tuesday. Jennifer had scheduled an all-hands meeting for M, and the energy in the conference room was electric with anticipation. Rumors had been circulating for days about organizational changes, new positions, and potential promotions. We're excited to announce the creation of a new role within our organization, Jennifer began, standing at the front of the room with the confidence of someone who'd made difficult decisions and stood by them. The business development manager position will focus on strategic growth initiatives, client relationship optimization, and market expansion. I kept my expression carefully neutral, though my palms were sweating. Marcus sat 3 seats to my right, scrolling through his phone with the distracted air of someone who assumed company announcements rarely affected him directly. We'll be accepting applications through Friday, with interviews scheduled for the following week, Jennifer continued. This is an excellent opportunity for someone looking to take on increased strategic responsibility and leadership challenges. After the meeting, the office buzzed with speculation. I caught fragments of conversations as I walked back to my desk, discussions about who might apply, who was qualified, who had the best chance of landing the role. Marcus emerged from the conference room looking thoughtful. Interesting development, he said, settling into his office chair. Though I can't imagine they'll find someone with the right experience internally. This kind of role usually requires someone with a proven track record in strategic planning. I bit back my response and simply nodded. Would you like me to block out time for you to review the applications when they come in? Good thinking. I'll probably need to weigh in on the decision-making process. He turned back to his computer, already moving on to the next item on his mental agenda. That evening, I stayed late to work on my application. The office was quiet except for the cleaning crew moving through the distant cubicles and the occasional rumble of the elevated train outside. I crafted each section carefully, highlighting the strategic work I'd done, the client relationships I'd managed, and the analytical skills I'd developed. Most importantly, I included detailed examples of successful projects: the Morrison account strategy, the Henderson market analysis, the Davidson Industries recovery plan that had saved a 6-figure contract. All work that had my fingerprints on it, all strategies that had produced measurable results. The next few days passed in a blur of routine tasks mixed with anticipatory energy. I scheduled Marcus's meetings, answered his calls, and prepared his reports, all while knowing that this familiar rhythm might soon change dramatically. Friday arrived with an unseasonably warm breeze that carried the scent of Lake Michigan through the office windows. I submitted my application at 4:57 p.m., 3 minutes before the deadline, then gathered my things and headed home to my Lincoln Park apartment. The following week brought the interview process. Jennifer had scheduled me for Thursday afternoon, and I spent the preceding days preparing responses to strategic scenarios, researching industry trends, and reviewing case studies. The interview itself felt like a conversation between colleagues rather than a formal evaluation. Jennifer asked thoughtful questions about market analysis, team leadership, and strategic planning. I found myself drawing on examples from my work with Marcus, though I was careful to frame them in terms of collaboration rather than solo achievements. One final question, Jennifer said as our hour together drew to a close. How do you handle situations where you need to work with colleagues who might not initially support your ideas or approach? I thought about Marcus's dismissive comments, his tendency to take credit for work he hadn't done, his habit of reducing my strategic contributions to administrative tasks. I believe in leading by example, I said finally. Results speak louder than titles or initial skepticism. If your approach produces measurable improvements, people eventually notice. It might take time, but consistency and professionalism tend to win out. Jennifer nodded, making a final note on her legal pad. Thank you, Sarah. We'll be making our decision early next week. The weekend felt endless. I cleaned my apartment, went for long runs along the lakefront, and tried unsuccessfully to lose myself in Netflix series. By Sunday evening, I was checking my email every 15 minutes despite knowing that Jennifer wouldn't send notifications outside business hours. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and the promise of rain. I was at my desk by 7:30 a.m., earlier than usual, trying to lose myself in routine tasks. Marcus arrived an hour later, coffee in hand and looking pleased about something. Morning, Sarah. Busy week ahead. I've got that presentation to the board on Wednesday, and I'll need you to coordinate with the graphics department about the slide deck, of course. I'll reach out to them this morning at 10:47 a.m. My phone rang. Jennifer's extension appeared on the caller ID, and my heart immediately shifted into overdrive. Sarah, could you come to my office? I have some news to share. The walk down the hallway felt like it took hours. Jennifer's assistant smiled at me warmly, which I chose to interpret as a positive sign, though I recognized I might be reading too much into a simple professional courtesy. Please, sit down, Jennifer said as I entered her office. She was smiling, which caused my anxiety and hope to spike simultaneously. After careful consideration and extensive discussion with the leadership team, we've decided to offer you the business development manager position. The words hit me like a wave of relief and excitement. I felt tears threatening the corners of my eyes and blinked them back, trying to maintain professional composure. Thank you, I managed. I'm honored by your confidence in me. The salary is $95,000 plus performance bonuses and a full benefits package. You'll have a team of 3 analysts reporting to you, and your office will be on the 14th floor. Can you start in 2 weeks? $95,000, nearly double my current salary. My own team, an office with actual walls and a door. Yes, absolutely. I'm ready for this challenge. Excellent. I'll have HR prepare the formal offer letter, and we'll make the company-wide announcement this afternoon. Walking back to my desk for what I now knew would be the last time as Marcus's assistant, I felt like everything had shifted into sharper focus. The familiar office sounds, the view of Marcus's closed door, the stack of his correspondence waiting for my attention, all of it would soon be part of my past rather than my daily reality. Marcus was on another conference call when I returned, his voice carrying through the door as he discussed territory expansions with what sounded like the regional team. I settled into my chair and tried to focus on routine tasks, but my mind kept drifting to the changes ahead. At PM, Jennifer sent the company-wide announcement. I watched as colleagues throughout the office checked their emails, their expressions shifting from casual interest to surprise to curiosity. Several people glanced in my direction, offering congratulatory smiles and thumbs-up gestures. Marcus's conference call ended at 3:15 p.m. I heard his chair creak as he presumably settled back to check his own messages. The silence from his office stretched longer than usual. At 3:22 p.m., his door opened. "Sarah," his voice was carefully controlled, but I could hear the tension underneath. "Could you come in here, please?" I walked into his office, noting that he'd positioned himself behind his desk like a shield. His laptop was open to Jennifer's announcement email, the text clearly visible on his screen. "Congratulations," he said, though the word came out strained. "This is unexpected, thank you. I'm excited about the opportunity." Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying my face as if seeing me clearly for the first time. "Business Development Manager. That's quite a leap from your current position." I kept my expression neutral. "I'm looking forward to the challenges, and you'll be working on strategic planning, client relationship management?" There was something in his tone, surprise, maybe, or confusion. "Yes, among other responsibilities." He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers strumming against his desk. "Well, I suppose congratulations are in order. Though I have to admit, I'm surprised they didn't look externally for someone with more traditional experience in strategic roles." The familiar knot formed in my stomach, but this time it was accompanied by something new, a quiet confidence that came from knowing my worth had been officially recognized. "I appreciate your honesty, Marcus. I'm confident that my work will speak for itself." That evening, several colleagues took me out for celebratory drinks at a nearby restaurant known for its craft cocktails and Chicago deep dish pizza. The atmosphere was festive, filled with congratulations and questions about my new role. "I always knew you were overqualified for that assistant position," said Janet from accounting, raising her cosmopolitan in a toast. "The way you handled the Morrison situation last year, that was pure strategic thinking. Remember when you saved the Davidson account?" added Tom from marketing. Marcus was ready to write them off, but you found that solution that kept them happy and actually increased their contract value. I smiled, feeling genuinely appreciated for the first time in months. These were my colleagues, people who'd watched me work, who'd seen the results I'd produced, who understood that titles don't always reflect capabilities. The next 2 weeks passed quickly as I prepared for the transition. Jennifer arranged for me to shadow the current business development practices at our sister company in Milwaukee, giving me insights into team management and strategic planning workflows. I also worked with HR to organize the handover of my current responsibilities. Marcus would need to find a new assistant, and I was determined to make the transition as smooth as possible despite our complicated history. My new office was everything I'd imagined: natural light streaming through large windows, space for a proper meeting table, and walls where I could hang my business degree and professional certifications. The nameplate on my door read Sarah Mitchell, Business Development Manager, and every time I saw it, I felt a surge of pride and determination. The first few weeks in my new role were intense but exhilarating. I dove into market analysis, developed strategic plans for client expansion, and began building relationships with my new team members. The work was challenging, but it drew on skills I'd been developing for years, skills that had often gone unrecognized in my previous position. Marcus and I maintained professional courtesy during this transition period. We'd pass in the hallway and exchange polite greetings, attend the same meetings where we'd contribute from our respective areas of expertise, and occasionally coordinate on projects that touched both sales and business development. But I could sense his discomfort with the new dynamic. During team meetings, when I'd present strategic insights or propose new approaches, I'd catch him watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read: surprise, maybe, or reassessment. 3 months into my new role, the company announced its annual awards dinner. This was always a highlight of the corporate calendar, a chance to celebrate achievements, recognize outstanding performance, and strengthen team relationships outside the office environment. The event was held at the Palmer House Hotel, a historic Chicago landmark known for its elegant ballrooms and old-world charm. The venue was stunning, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over round tables draped in crisp white linens, with centerpieces of seasonal flowers and the gentle murmur of professional conversation filling the air. I'd been nominated for the Rising Star Award, recognition given to employees who demonstrated exceptional growth and strategic impact. The nomination felt like validation of everything I'd worked toward, acknowledgement that my contributions were valued and recognized. At the highest levels of the organization, Marcus was being honored with a Team Leadership Award, recognizing his sales team's performance over the past year. It was well-deserved recognition. Despite our personal conflicts, his team had consistently met their targets and maintained strong client relationships. The dinner portion of the evening was pleasant, good food, engaging conversation with colleagues from different departments, and the comfortable atmosphere that comes when people who work together get to interact in a more relaxed setting. As the formal program began, Jennifer took the stage to present the various awards. She spoke eloquently about the importance of recognizing excellence, the value of strategic thinking, and the company's commitment to supporting employee growth and development. Our Rising Star Award goes to someone who has demonstrated exceptional strategic insight, innovative problem-solving, and leadership potential, Jennifer announced. This year's recipient has made significant contributions to business development, client relationship management, and market expansion. Please join me in congratulating Sarah Mitchell. The applause was warm and genuine as I made my way to the stage, accepting the Crystal Award, a beautiful piece that caught and reflected the ballroom's chandelier light. I felt overwhelmed by gratitude and a sense of accomplishment. "Thank you," I said into the microphone, looking out over the sea of colleagues and friends. "This recognition means more to me than I can express. I'm grateful for the opportunity to contribute to our team's success and excited about the strategic challenges ahead." The applause continued as I returned to my table, where my team members offered congratulations and celebratory toasts. I felt genuinely happy, not just about the award, but about the trajectory of my career and the recognition of work I was passionate about. When it came time for Marcus to receive his Team Leadership Award, he approached the stage with the confidence of someone accustomed to recognition. His acceptance speech was polished and professional, highlighting his team's achievements and expressing gratitude for the company's support. But as he concluded his remarks and prepared to leave the stage, he paused and looked out over the audience. "You know," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the ballroom's sound system, "success in business often comes down to understanding roles and capabilities, knowing who you are, what you're capable of, and where you fit in the larger organization." I felt a flutter of unease, though I wasn't sure why. "I've learned a lot this year about leadership, about teamwork, and about recognizing talent where it exists," Marcus continued. "Sometimes we make assumptions about people based on their current positions rather than their potential. Sometimes we let titles define our expectations rather than letting performance speak for itself." The room was quiet now, focused on his words. I could see colleagues glancing between Marcus and me, sensing an undercurrent they couldn't quite identify. "I want to acknowledge someone who's taught me an important lesson about not underestimating people," Marcus said, his eyes finding mine across the ballroom. "Sarah Mitchell has shown all of us that growth and achievement come from dedication, skill, and strategic thinking, not from the limitations others might place on us." He paused, and I held my breath. "A few months ago, I made the mistake of telling Sarah that she'd never be more than my assistant. I was wrong, dead wrong, and I'm grateful that she proved me wrong in the most professional and impressive way possible." The ballroom erupted in applause, louder and more sustained than any we'd heard that evening. I felt tears threatening my eyes, but this time they were tears of vindication rather than frustration. As Marcus returned to his table, several colleagues approached me with congratulations and expressions of admiration. The story of my promotion had been office gossip for months, but hearing Marcus acknowledge his previous dismissive attitude and publicly recognize my capabilities felt like a moment of genuine professional redemption. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations, congratulations, and celebratory toasts. Colleagues shared stories about their own career challenges, their experiences with being underestimated, and their admiration for how I'd handled the transition from assistant to manager. As the evening wound down and people began gathering their things to leave, Marcus approached my table. "Sarah, could I speak with you for a moment?" We walked to a quiet corner of the ballroom, away from the clusters of colleagues saying their goodbyes. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice more sincere than I'd ever heard it. "What I said to you that night in my office about never being more than my assistant, that was unfair and unprofessional. You'd been doing strategic work all along, and I was too caught up in titles and hierarchy to recognize it." I studied his face, looking for signs of insincerity or calculated professionalism. Instead, I saw genuine regret and what appeared to be authentic respect. "I appreciate you saying that, Marcus. It means a lot. You've handled this entire situation with more grace than I probably deserved. The way you've transitioned into your new role, the results you've produced, the leadership you've shown, it's impressive. I'm genuinely glad the company recognized your potential." We shook hands, and for the first time since I'd known him, the gesture felt like mutual professional respect rather than hierarchical courtesy. 6 months later, as I reviewed quarterly reports in my office reports that now came to me directly, rather than through Marcus's filter, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The Rising Star Award sat on my bookshelf, catching the afternoon sunlight that streamed through my windows. My team had exceeded our business development targets by 23%, securing 3 major new accounts and expanding relationships with existing clients. The strategic approaches I developed were being implemented across other regional offices, and Jennifer had hinted at additional advancement opportunities in the coming year. Marcus and I had developed a productive working relationship built on mutual respect and complementary expertise. His sales experience paired well with my strategic analysis, and we'd collaborated successfully on several major proposals. But perhaps most importantly, I'd learned something valuable about advocating for myself, about the difference between titles and capabilities, and about the importance of having allies who can see potential even when others cannot. As I prepared to leave the office that evening, I thought about the conversation that had started this entire journey. Marcus's dismissive comment about never being more than his assistant. At the time, those words had stung. Now, they served as a reminder of how much can change when you refuse to let other people's limitations define your possibilities. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, pressing the button for the parking garage. As the floors counted down, I smiled, thinking about tomorrow's challenges and the strategic opportunities that lay ahead. Sometimes the best response to being underestimated isn't argument or confrontation, it's simply proving them wrong through excellence, professionalism, and results that speak louder than any words ever could.